Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are really getting into the weeds on what value actually means in the crypto space.
Yes, specifically looking at this huge contrast between two very different assets.
Exactly. On one side, you've got the giant Tether, USDT, almost a piece of financial plumbing,
Right.
massive valuation, heading towards $500 billion.
A real behemoth. And on the other side, Helium, HNT, focused on connecting sensors, IoT devices.
And its valuation, tiny in comparison, under $500 million.
That's almost 1,000 to 1 difference. It's staggering.
So here's the hook. What if that tiny asset, HNT, was fundamentally more real?
And that's the core of the source material we're digging into today. It argues Helium is maybe the closest thing we have in crypto to an actual infrastructure toll road, for the machine economy.
And that its valuation, compared to something like Tether, is, the source uses the word absurd.
Right. So the mission for this deep dive is to really unpack that argument. We're looking at the fundamental conflict presented in the source. It's about belief versus utility. Is an asset valuable because everyone believes it is, like Tether with its financial promises?
Okay, belief as collateral.
Or is it valuable because it's actually used for something tangible, like Helium, supposedly backed by actual data moving across its network? Data from sensors, trackers, that whole IoT machine economy.
Faith-backed versus data-backed. That's the frame.
Exactly. And the source really tees this up with that huge 1,000x valuation gap.
And some pretty potent analogies too, right? Like
What?
buying Spectrum before 4G.
Yeah, exactly. Setting up this idea of massive asymmetric potential.
Okay, let's dive into section 1, the valuation paradox. Pocket change versus the beast. We've got the numbers. Tether, $500 billion. Helium, $423 million. You called it pocket change.
The source does, yeah. It highlights the sheer scale difference. Tether is this 1,000 times bigger beast.
So why has Tether held that value? It's faced skepticism, regulatory questions, but it's still there, still massive.
Well, you have to give it credit for resilience. It's survived, pretty much everything thrown at it for years because it's become absolutely essential. It's the main liquidity highway for the entire crypto world. Trading, DeFi. It runs on USDT.
So its importance keeps it stable.
Largely, yes. The source describes its backing quite bluntly. A promise, a spreadsheet of treasuries, and blind faith.
Blind faith. That
Yes.
sounds risky.
It is, potentially, but that faith holds because Tether is so deeply embedded, it's liquid. People need it, so they trust it, or perhaps they have to trust it.
The source even calls it the most systemically important shadow bank in the world. That term, shadow bank. What does that really imply here?
It means it operates outside the really strict rules that regular banks follow. It issues these dollar-pegged tokens based on its own assurances, its own audits.
Not government-backed or FDIC-insured like regular bank deposits.
Exactly. So that $500 billion valuation rests entirely on the market continuing to believe Tether can and will honor redemptions. Faith is the collateral.
Okay, so that's the beast. Now contrast that with Helium. If Tether relies on faith in its financial backing, what backs HNT?
Helium's structure is fundamentally different. The source says its backing is actual data moving across an actual network. Meaning devices, gateways, users, real things sending real information. It's not a financial promise from a central issuer.
So it's tied to usage, activity.
Precisely. It's messier, sure. It's definitely earlier stage, more volatile day to day. But the value proposition is tied to observable network activity, not just trust in a balance sheet.
So the type of collateral is the key difference, not just the size.
That's the core argument. Belief versus demonstrated utility.
But hold on. Tether's model, based on belief or systemic need, has worked for a long time. It's the incumbent. Why bet on the little guy, Helium, if its value proposition is so different and maybe less proven at scale?
That's a fair challenge. And it brings us to section 2, utility-driven economics.
Right.
How does Helium actually try to structure its value around utility?
Right. What's the mechanism?
It's built around something called data credits, or DCs, basically network fuel. If you want your device, say an environmental sensor or a delivery tracker, to send data over the Helium network, you have to pay for it.
Makes sense. Like paying your phone bill.
Kind of, yeah. But instead of paying in dollars directly, you pay using these data credits.
Okay, so where do DCs come from? And how does this link to HNT's value?
Here's the crucial part. The only way to get data credits is by burning HNT, the network's native token.
Burning, meaning destroying it, taking it out of circulation.
Exactly. permanently. For every dollar's worth of data transmission needed, a corresponding amount of HNT is destroyed.
So wait, if more people use the network,
More HNT gets burned. Forever.
okay, that's what the source means by demand as collateral, isn't it?
Precisely. The demand for the network service, the bandwidth, the data transfer, directly consumes the token supply.
So it's not just belief holding up the price, it's actual economic activity, actual usage, creating scarcity. Right. As bandwidth usage grows, more scooters tracked, more sensors reporting, whatever the use case, the supply of HNT inherently tightens. It's designed to be the consumable fuel for the infrastructure.
So it avoids being just another governance token, or as the source puts it, a casino chip.
That's the claim. Its economics are supposedly tied to tangible infrastructure usage.
Okay, the mechanism sounds clever. Demand drives scarcity. But is the demand real? The source says traffic is already ramping. Do we see evidence of that? Is it significant?
Well, significant is relative, right? Compared to Verizon or AT&T, no, it's tiny. But the source points to specific real-world adoption.
Like what?
Companies using it for asset tracking across large areas,
Yeah.
logistics, environmental monitoring, things where it's specific tech, long-range, low power makes sense.
These are actual businesses burning HNT for DCs.
Yes, they might be micro purchases for each data packet sent, but the source argues it's consistent, predictable, utility-driven demand, not just speculation.
So if a big company deploys, say, thousands of trackers,
That creates a steady, measurable burn rate for HNT, something purely speculative assets don't have. It's an underlying economic engine, even if it's still warming up.
right, so tangible usage, even if early. But let's play devil's advocate. HNT's price is incredibly volatile. Doesn't that scare off the big companies that need predictable costs?
Absolutely. That's a major hurdle. Volatility is a risk for corporate adoption. They prefer stable pricing for operational expenses.
So the mechanism is neat, but adoption could stall.
That's the risk, definitely. Or a competitor could emerge. The network is still young compared to the telecom giants. But the source's counter is that the market is so focused on that short-term volatility.
That it's missing the underlying utility picture.
Exactly. That it's vastly discounting the real usage that is already happening and the potential for growth.
Okay, this potential mismatch between current price and future utility, especially with external factors, that sounds like what the source calls the nut stuff asymmetric kicker. Let's unpack that phrase.
Right, section 3. The asymmetric kicker and the regulatory shift. The asymmetric kicker basically means some outside event or force could dramatically change the game.
Not just market trends, but something bigger.
Yeah, something that shifts the fundamentals disproportionately. In this case, the source points to potential regulatory changes.
Regulatory changes affecting.
Stablecoins, specifically the big ones like Tether.
Why would regulators suddenly clamp down on Tether now, after all this time?
Because stablecoins aren't just niche crypto tools anymore. They're huge. We're talking hundreds of billions. Regulators globally see them as potentially systemically risky financial entities.
Like shadow banks, as we discussed.
Exactly. And there's a growing push, especially in places like the US and Europe, to bring them under stricter rules, mandating clearer reserves, maybe more transparency.
And crucially,
Potentially demanding proof of utility. Are these just speculative instruments, or do they serve a verifiable purpose in payments or finance?
so if regulations demand utility,
And the Tether's model, based on opaque reserves and, well, belief, suddenly looks much more vulnerable. Its systemic risk becomes a liability under that new lens.
and this creates the asymmetry. How does this benefit Helium?
Massively, according to the source. If the regulatory environment shifts towards favoring systems backed by verifiable usage and real-world data.
Helium's model fits perfectly.
Right. The source calls Helium the best live case study for exactly that kind of data-backed system. It's already built on that principle.
So the so what here is pretty big.
It's huge. Imagine, as the source suggests, if Tether's $500 billion valuation suddenly had to be justified based on actual usage, traffic, data pumped across the mesh.
It likely couldn't support that number based purely on current non-speculative payment volume.
Probably not even close. And if you apply that same utility-based valuation lens to Helium with its $423 million market cap,
It starts to look incredibly cheap. Absurdly cheap, perhaps.
that's the argument. You're potentially buying functioning utility infrastructure at a discount because the market is pricing in Tether's regulatory risk, but not Helium's regulatory advantage.
This leads perfectly into the final section, section 4, the infrastructure toll road analogy. The source uses some really vivid comparisons to drive this home.
Yeah, these analogies are powerful because they frame HNT not as a currency, but as an infrastructure asset, like owning a piece of the essential plumbing.
The first big one was owning helium is like buying spectrum before 4G. Explain that.
Think about it. Before smartphones and streaming video took off, mobile spectrum was valuable, sure, but not insanely valuable.
Nobody knew we'd all be watching Netflix on our phones 24/7.
Exactly. The demand, the traffic hadn't exploded yet. Those who bought the spectrum rights early, before that massive utility became obvious,
Made fortunes when the traffic hit because they owned the essential finite resource needed for connectivity.
Precisely. The analogy positions HNT as that fundamental resource, the right to connectivity, for the coming machine-to-machine economy. You're buying it before the IoT traffic truly ramps up.
Okay, that's compelling. What was the other analogy? Something about pipelines.
Right. Buying pipeline rights before shale.
Okay, how does that fit?
The shale oil and gas boom created a massive need for new ways to transport all that energy. Suddenly, you needed pipelines everywhere.
If you owned the rights to build or operate those pipelines before the boom really hit,
You owned the essential infrastructure. You controlled the toll road for that physical traffic. Your asset became incredibly valuable because the traffic had to flow through it.
so both analogies point to owning the fundamental infrastructure before the demand skyrockets.
Yes, and that connects directly back to the source's main conclusion. Buying HNT isn't primarily a bet on narratives or crypto hype.
It's a simple bet on traffic.
A bet that the machine economy will grow, that billions of devices will need to connect, and that this network provides a viable way for them to do it.
And the source wrecks this up by saying you're essentially buying the pipes of the machine-to-machine economy at junkyard prices.
Junkyard prices, yeah. Because the market, they argue, is fixated elsewhere on stablecoin stability, on short-term hype cycles.
But crucially, they add, the traffic is already ramping. It's not just theoretical anymore.
Right. The utility is starting, even if it's small. This analysis forces you to step back from the day-to-day crypto noise and look at the underlying economic engine. Is there a real usage? Is it growing? And is it priced correctly?
Okay, let's try to wrap this up. The core takeaway from this deep dive, looking at this source material, is really about this fundamental clash in valuing crypto assets.
Yeah, it's belief versus utility, starkly illustrated by Tether and Helium.
Tether represents massive scale, systemic importance, but value underpinned by essentially collective faith and opaque financial backing.
While Helium, though much smaller and earlier stage, presents a case for value directly tied to demonstrable network usage data being transmitted, tokens being burned, utility-backed value.
And the argument we explored is that this difference, especially with potential regulatory shifts favoring utility, makes Helium's current valuation seem dramatically understated. It's positioned as buying a functional toll road for the machine economy at a steep discount.
Precisely. It challenges the conventional wisdom about crypto valuation.
So that leaves us with a final provocative thought for you, the listener.
Yeah, building on this idea of utility and regulation, the source presents this valuation gap as something that likely can't last forever. The market, or perhaps regulators, will eventually test the true nature of value here. Is it faith or is it function?
So the question to ponder is, this case study focused on helium. But what other areas, what other technologies might be out there right now where the essential infrastructure is already built, already live, and functioning?
But it's maybe being overlooked, priced, as the source says, at junkyard prices, simply because the market hasn't fully grasped or priced in the inevitable wave of usage, the traffic that's coming with the next big technological shift. Where else is the toll road already paved, but nobody's buying tickets yet?
Disclaimer. North Breach Limited, Nutstuff trading name, is an appointed representative of Messels Limited, which is authorized and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. Nutstuff has made every reasonable effort to ensure the information provided in this communication is correct. But Nutstuff makes no representation nor any warranty as to whether the information is accurate, complete, or up to date. To the extent permitted by law, Nutstuff accepts no responsibility for any errors or misstatements, negligent or otherwise. Nutstuff, its associates, officers, or employees may also have interests in the financial instruments referred to in this information by acting in various roles. The information in this media is confidential. If you are not the intended recipient, you are not authorized to use the information in this media in any way. Nutstuff does not guarantee the integrity of any media or attached files. The view or opinions expressed are the author's own and may not reflect the view or opinions of Nutstuff. Electronic communications carried within the Nutstuff system may be monitored.